General Motors seems to be making a pretty significant shift when it comes to how they're approaching their electric vehicle battery strategy.
Well, it certainly looks that way. I mean, especially when you consider their decision to sell their stake in that Lansing, Michigan battery plant. The one back to LG Energy Solution.
It is surprising, isn't it? I mean, especially given all the publicity surrounding that plant's announcement just a couple years back. So what do you think's going on here with this unexpected move?
It could be that their current battery plants, the ones in Ohio and Tennessee, are already meeting what they need for EV production. Seems like they're really trying to streamline things, maybe even speed up the process of making their EV line profitable.
So you're thinking they're being cautious about overspending in the EV market.
It's definitely a possibility. There's a lot of pressure to show profitability in the EV sector these days.
Yeah.
This might be their way of addressing those concerns. What do you think will happen to the Lansing plant now?
I've heard LG Energy Solutions going to use the facility to produce battery cells, though not for General Motors.
That's right. Apparently, they'll be making cells for another automaker, though they haven't said who publicly.
Makes you wonder about the financial side of all this. How is General Motors being compensated for their initial investment in the Lansing plant?
LG Energy Solution will be giving them back their initial investment. It's estimated to be about $1 billion. This way, General Motors recoups its investment, and LG Energy Solution can go ahead and use that facility for their own production. What do you think about LG Energy Solutions' commitment to creating jobs at the Lansing plant, even with this ownership change?
Sounds like a positive thing for the local workforce, for sure. Keeping those initially promised 1,700 jobs means stability and opportunities in the area. This move, though, is only one part of the equation. General Motors and LG Energy Solution are actually expanding their partnership beyond that Lansing plant. What can you tell us about this new development?
It seems they've decided to team up and develop a new type of battery cell. The focus this time, prismatic cell technology.
Why the change to prismatic cells? What's the advantage over the pouch-style cells General Motors has been using in its EVs?
Well, prismatic cells could have a few benefits, one being a higher energy storage capacity. This means longer driving ranges for electric vehicles. Plus, there's the potential to reduce the overall weight of EVs and even simplify the manufacturing process, which could bring down costs. What kind of impact do you think this is going to have on General Motors' current battery production using those pouch-style cells?
From what I understand, General Motors is planning on sticking with those pouch-style cells, at least for now. They'll keep using the ones from their Ohio and Tennessee plants for their current EV models. So it seems like they're going with a two-pronged approach at the moment, with prismatic cells likely to be phased in down the line.
It does give them some breathing room. They can meet the current demand with their current setup while they work on this new tech for models down the line.
This seems like a smart adaptation to the ever-changing landscape of electric vehicles.
Definitely. Short term, they focus on profitability. Long term, they're diversifying their battery tech. It puts them in a strong position to stay competitive in the EV market. It's changing fast.
This move to develop prismatic cells, it makes you think they see real potential for improvements in range and performance for electric vehicles.
Absolutely. With prismatic cells, you can pack more energy into the same size battery pack. That means longer driving ranges on a single charge, and that's something consumers really care about.
So we're talking more than just an increase in range, right? Are there any other performance advantages that come with prismatic cells?
Well, because of their rigid structure, they could actually be safer and more durable than the pouch-style cells. And that could mean longer-lasting batteries for these EVs.
So potentially fewer battery replacements and lower overall costs for consumers.
It's possible. But how much it affects battery life and replacement cost really depends on a lot of things. How people use their cars in the real world. Advancements in battery management systems. There are a lot of factors.
Aside from the technological side of things, what are the economic implications of this potential shift toward prismatic cells?
Well, if the manufacturing process is simpler with prismatic cells, it could mean economies of scale. And that could make electric vehicles more affordable. More people would have access to them.
And wider adoption of EVs, if it's driven by affordability and all these technological advancements, could that have a big impact on the environment?
It would definitely help. Fewer greenhouse gas emissions, less dependence on fossil fuels. It'd be good for the environment.
So with all the potential upsides to these prismatic cells, what are some of the challenges that might get in the way of widespread adoption?
One of the big ones is going to be investment. You need new manufacturing facilities, infrastructure, all that to support large-scale production. It's a big undertaking.
So that could cause delays in the transition to this new technology.
It's possible. Setting up those new supply chains and getting those production capabilities online could take some time. It could slow down the shift to using these prismatic cells.
And this shift toward prismatic cells, it could also have an impact on the workers who are already involved in making those pouch-style cells.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. This transition might mean retraining. People would need to learn new skills to work with these new manufacturing processes.
So what can be done to help those workers make a smooth transition? What can we do to minimize any negative impacts?
Collaboration is key. Automakers, battery manufacturers, even government agencies, they need to work together to make sure those workers are taken care of. Give them the training and support they need.
This all points to how important it is to have strong workforce development initiatives, especially in an industry like automotive that's changing so rapidly.
It's crucial. Investing in skills and knowledge, keeping the workforce up to date, that's how we ensure a successful transition to a more sustainable future for transportation.
So General Motors sells its stake in the Lansing plant. They focus on these prismatic cells. What advice would you give to other automakers who are trying to navigate this EV landscape?
I'd say focus on partnerships, collaborations. That will speed up the development and deployment of these new battery technologies.
And I imagine staying on top of things is crucial too. Market trends, what consumers are looking for, making sure your strategies match up with how things are changing.
Absolutely. You've got to keep an eye on the latest advancements in battery technology and the evolving preferences of consumers. If automakers want to stay competitive, they need to stay informed.
What about the government? What role do regulations and incentives play in the future of battery production and getting people to adopt electric vehicles? Do you think they have a big impact?
I'd say government policies are crucial. They can offer incentives for investments in battery research and development. They can support the expansion of that charging infrastructure, which is key if we want people to adopt these EVs more widely.
So what kinds of specific policies could really help to speed up this transition to electric vehicles and help this industry grow?
Well, there are tax credits that could help consumers who are buying electric vehicles. Investing in those public charging stations, putting stricter emission standards in place, all those things could help. They could lead to a faster adoption of EVs.
These measures could be crucial in creating a more sustainable transportation system, a system where we aren't so reliant on those fossil fuels.
They're absolutely crucial. If we're going to address climate change and promote a cleaner, more efficient transportation sector, we have to start thinking about these things.
So looking ahead, what are some of the biggest factors that will determine whether electric vehicles are successful in the long run?
Battery tech has to keep advancing. We need a reliable charging infrastructure. And those EVs have to be affordable. Those are the big ones.
And consumers have to be on board too. That acceptance and demand will be a big part of the equation.
Definitely. Consumers need to feel confident about electric vehicles. They need to trust their reliability, their range, their safety. That's what's going to drive widespread adoption.
Developing and manufacturing these new battery technologies takes a lot of money. What role can venture capital and private equity play in supporting these innovations?
They can be a big help. They can provide the funding that startups and companies need to work on these cutting-edge battery technologies. Traditional investors might see those as too risky.
So their involvement could actually accelerate the pace of innovation in the whole battery technology sector.
Exactly. By investing in these promising technologies, they can help bring them to market faster. That's going to help advance the whole EV industry.
It sounds like the future of electric vehicles is pretty bright, and these battery technology advancements are right at the center of it all. What kind of impact do you think these advancements will have on the traditional auto industry?
Disruption. That's the word that comes to mind. These established automakers are going to have to adapt. They're going to have to innovate if they want to stay competitive.
As the industry shifts to electric vehicles, do you think we'll see big changes in the way things are manufactured and how those supply chains work?
We're going to see big changes for sure. Producing electric vehicles requires different skills, different expertise than those traditional combustion engine vehicles. Manufacturing processes, supply chains, they're all going to need to change.
What about the workers? How will this affect the job market in the automotive sector? Will people need to be retrained, upskilled?
It will create new job opportunities. Battery manufacturing, software development, electric powertrain engineering, those are all going to be growth areas. But investing in training and development programs, that's what's going to be essential. We need to give those workers the skills they need to succeed in this changing industry.
So educational institutions have a role to play here. How can they help prepare the future workforce for the demands of this EV industry?
They're a critical part of this. Universities, technical schools, they can offer specialized courses, degree programs, electric vehicle engineering, battery technology, all those related fields.
The growth of the electric vehicle market,
Hmm.
it's going to have ripple effects across all sorts of industries. What other industries do you think will be impacted by this growth?
It's going to be widespread. Energy, utilities, infrastructure, all of those are going to feel it. Think about it. As the demand for electricity to charge all these EVs goes up, utilities will have to invest in upgrading their grids and finding renewable energy sources.
And what about the oil and gas industry? They've always been so reliant on those fossil fuels. How will they be impacted?
This shift away from gasoline-powered cars is going to impact them, that's for sure. We could see a decline in the demand for fossil fuels.
So how can they adapt? What can they do to stay relevant in a future that's all about electric vehicles?
Well, they could look at alternative energy sources, biofuels, hydrogen, or maybe they could even become energy providers themselves. Start offering charging services for electric vehicles.
It seems like this transition presents a lot of challenges,
Mhm.
but also a lot of opportunities for so many different parts of our economy.
You hit the nail on the head. It's going to take adjustments, investments, but there's a lot of room for innovation and growth, too.
So consumers, everyday people, what role can they play in all this? How can they help speed up the adoption of electric vehicles and help us build a more sustainable transportation system?
They have a lot of power. They can make informed choices. Consider an electric vehicle for their next car. They can support policies that encourage people to adopt EVs. And they can support businesses that are trying to promote sustainable transportation.
So their actions, their choices, those can have a real impact on the future of how we get around.
Absolutely. If they embrace these electric vehicles and push for a more sustainable system, they can be a big part of shaping a future that's cleaner and more efficient.
This has been a really insightful conversation. It's given us a much clearer picture of the implications of this shift toward electric vehicles. It's so multifaceted.
I agree. There's technology, economics, social aspects, the environment. It's all connected.
It's really fascinating to see how General Motors is handling all of this. Their decisions about battery production really highlight how complex and how quickly this whole electric vehicle industry is evolving.
Their actions definitely show where their priorities are. Selling their stake in that Lansing plant, their focus on developing those prismatic cells. They're looking at profitability, but they're also pushing for technological advancement. It's a balancing act.
Do you think these strategic moves will give General Motors a real edge in the long run? Or will they end up falling behind in this race for EV dominance?
It's hard to say. This market is so unpredictable, so dynamic. No one can really predict what will happen.
So what are the key factors that are going to determine which automakers come out on top in this changing landscape?
Adaptability, that's going to be essential. They need to be able to adapt to shifting market conditions, to consumer preferences, to those technological advancements that are always coming up.
And how about battery technology as a whole? How big of a role do you think it's going to play in shaping the automotive industry and in this whole transition to electric vehicles?
It's going to be a driving force. Those advancements in battery technology, especially when it comes to things like energy density, charging speed, how long those batteries last, those are the things that are going to make or break EV adoption. And that's going to determine how successful this industry ultimately is.
This has been a really eye-opening look at the strategic decisions and the tech advancements that are shaping the electric vehicle landscape. Any final thoughts for our listeners as we wrap things up?
I think it's important to remember this is a transition. It's complex. It has a lot of moving parts. But ultimately, it's about creating a transportation future that's cleaner and more sustainable. And that's something worth striving for.